You think a man like me forgets what it means to burn? No, I just learned how to carry the fire in silence. My name's Corey, 61 years old, retired firefighter out of San Diego. 40 years on the job, running into smoke and chaos while everyone else was running out. I thought the hardest part of my life ended when I laid my helmet down. I was wrong. The real flames were waiting for me inside my own family. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and let us know where you're listening in the comments. After Esme, my wife, my anchor, passed, I didn't have the strength to fight the loneliness. My daughter, Lila, and her husband, Tobias, said I could move into their guest room. It'll be good for the kids, they told me, like it was family taking care of family. But good intentions don't come with a rent bill stapled to the front door. $1,200 a month for a single room, out of my firefighter's pension. And if that wasn't enough, they had me patching walls, fixing leaks, hauling lumber, free labor wrapped in fake smiles. I told myself it was temporary. That family was worth swallowing pride for. But every nail I drove into their walls felt like I was hammering the coffin of my own dignity. The only joy left for me was in the early mornings, kneading dough the way Esme taught me back in our kitchen. The rhythm of it, the smell of yeast and flour, kept me sane. Sometimes my grandson Brett would wander in, asking questions about the firehouse, his eyes shining like he wanted to carry my stories forward. Sometimes Katie, my granddaughter, would steal a piece of dough and giggle. Those moments were oxygen in a smoke-filled room. But Lila and Tobias, they weren't seeing a man broken by grief. They saw a resource, a wallet that refilled once a month, and a pair of hands that never stopped working. And every time Tobias slapped me on the back and called me Roomy, I could hear the disrespect underneath as sharp as broken glass. Still, I kept quiet. Until the night I walked into the corner store on 4th Street, like I had for 32 years, and bought a lottery ticket with the same numbers I'd been playing since Esme dared me to pick them. Birthdays, anniversaries, station number. A ritual, a private joke between us that lingered long after she was gone. When the clerk tore the stub and slid across the counter, I didn't know my whole damn world was about to tilt on its axis, because that piece of paper was about to turn their exploitation into their greatest mistake. And when they found out, oh, they'd wish they'd never made me pay rent under their roof. The TV screen blinked with the winning numbers at night, and my heart stopped on the 4th one. The glow of the television bathed the empty guest room in blue, the kind of light that makes everything look unreal, like a dream you're not sure you want to wake from. I held the ticket in my hand, the paper thin and flimsy, but it felt heavier than any fire hose I'd ever dragged through a burning building. One number matched, then another, then the 3rd. By the 4th, I couldn't breathe. By the 6th, I knew my life had just been rewired for $1 million. I sat there, ticket trembling between my fingers, hearing Esme's laugh echo in my head. She used to say, "If luck ever comes, Corey, it'll knock so hard you won't have to open the door." And here it was, pounding at my chest like a battering ram. For a long while I didn't move, didn't shout, didn't celebrate. A firefighter learns the difference between a spark and a blaze, and this was the spark that could either save me or burn everything down. Morning came, and so did Tobias. He barged into my room without knocking, holding a list of chores like I was his damn handyman. Got a leak under the sink, and while you're at it, the fence gate's sagging. His voice was casual, dismissive, like I was furniture. I looked at him, at the man who treated my pension like his side hustle, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel small. I felt dangerous. I folded the lottery ticket into my wallet, close to where I kept Esme's photo, my secret weapon, and I walked past Tobias without a word. At breakfast, Lila was fussing with Katie's hair, barely glancing at me. "Dad, rent's due this week," she said, like clockwork. No warmth, no acknowledgement, just business. Tobias smirked across the table, like he was already spending it. I stirred my coffee and thought about how their voices would sound when I finally told them, but I didn't. Not yet, because revenge, I've learned, isn't fire, quick and raging. It's smoke. It seeps, it suffocates. It makes them choke before they even see the flames. Later that day, I drove to the claim office, palms sweating on the steering wheel. The woman behind the counter checked my ticket 3 times, her eyes wide. "Sir," she whispered, sliding a stack of papers toward me. "You're a very lucky man." Lucky? Maybe. But luck wasn't the word I felt settling in my bones. What I felt was power. For the first time since Esme died, I had control. As I signed the paperwork, pen scratching across the forms, I realized something. This wasn't just about money. This was about dignity. About taking back what they thought they stripped from me. I walked out into San Diego's sunlight, the city noisy and alive around me. Seagulls overhead, traffic humming, kids shouting on the corner. All felt sharper, brighter. I had a fire in my chest again. And back at Lila's house, they had no idea the man they thought was their tenant had just become their reckoning. That night, when I tucked the check into my jacket, I swore to Esme's memory. They'll never see me as weak again. When I walked back through Lila's front door that evening, the house smelled like garlic bread and overcooked chicken. Family dinner. Everyone laughing, clinking glasses. To them, it was another night. To me, it was the beginning of the end. Tobias was already holding court at the table, bragging about some big deal at work that I knew was nothing more than a small promotion he'd milked for months. Lila smiled too wide at his stories. The same smile she used when she wanted me to fix her dishwasher or repaint her deck. Brett sat slouched with his phone under the table, Katie whispering secrets in his ear. I sat quietly, watching, feeling like I was seeing them for the first time. These people weren't my caretakers. They were my jailers, and I'd been paying for privilege. "Dad," Lila said suddenly, setting her fork down, "you'll cover the groceries next week, right? Tobias is still waiting on that reimbursement from work." I looked at her, at the girl I once held in my arms after her first heartbreak, my daughter, who once clung to me when thunder scared her. And now here she was, nickel-and-diming me, blind to the man in front of her. "Sure," I said evenly, sipping my water. "I'll cover more than you think." Tobias chuckled, misreading the tone. "That's our guy. Always reliable." Reliable. That word burned. Not respected. Not honored. Reliable. Like a faucet you expect to drip on time. Later, while they cleared plates, I slipped out onto the porch. The San Diego night was heavy with the ocean breeze. Distant sirens cutting through the hum of the city. I pulled the ticket stub from my wallet, ran my thumb over the faded numbers. It was more than paper. It was a torch waiting to be lit. And then voices through the open kitchen window. Lila and Tobias, whispering. "We could raise the rent," Tobias said, his tone low but sharp. "He won't fight it. He needs us." Lila sighed. "I just wish he'd stop being so cheap. I mean, he doesn't even buy decent clothes. What's he saving for?" Cheap. My own daughter called me cheap. After everything I'd poured into her life. College tuition, her first car, paying her debts when Tobias blew through his credit cards. I clenched the ticket, so tight it nearly tore. But I didn't step inside, didn't confront them. Not yet. Firefighters know timing. You don't rush into a burning building blind. You study the smoke, you feel the heat, you wait for the right moment. The right moment was coming. When I finally went back inside, Tobias grinned and clapped me on the shoulder. "Hey, Rumi, don't forget about that sink tomorrow." "Rumi," I smiled, slow and steady. "Don't worry, Tobias. Tomorrow, I'll take care of it." What he didn't know was that tomorrow, I had an appointment with a lawyer. And when that gavel of truth came down, Tobias would choke on the word Rumi forever. That night, lying in the narrow guest bed, I whispered into the dark. "Patience, Corey. Let them dig their own grave." The law office sat on the second floor of a sun-bleached building downtown, wedged between a bail bondsman and a pawn shop. Not exactly marble columns and gold trim, but I didn't care. What I needed was clarity, protection. Someone who'd stand between me and the two people I could no longer trust. The receptionist handed me a clipboard, smiling politely, but my hands were steady as I filled out the forms. Name, Corey Ramirez. Occupation, retired. Dependents, none. Income, pension. And now, lottery winnings. It felt surreal scratching those words on the paper, as if writing them made it real. When a lawyer, a sharp-eyed woman named Marissa Kane, ushered me into her office, she spoke fast, crisp, the kind of tone you knew came from years of not letting anyone push her around. I explained the situation, the ticket, the numbers, the decades-long ritual, the so-called family I lived with. "Mr. Ramirez," she said, flipping through the paperwork, "this one is legally yours, 100%, unless your daughter or son-in-law's names are on that ticket. They have no claim." I let out a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "So they can't touch it?" She shook her head. "Not unless you give it to them. And for what you've told me, I wouldn't recommend that." For the first time in years, I felt a weight slide off my shoulders. Not gone, but lighter, because now I knew the truth. I wasn't trapped. Not anymore. On the drive back, I rolled down the window, let the ocean air whip across my face. San Diego felt different that day, like it wasn't pressing down on me anymore, like I had room to breathe. Back at Lila's, Tobias was waiting in the driveway, arms crossed, wearing that smug half-smile that always made me want to break something. "Where you been, Rumi?" he asked, his tone just a shade too sharp. "Downtown," I said simply. He frowned. "For what?" I met his eyes, steady as a steel beam, just taking care of business. He laughed, but it was forced. He wanted control, and for the first time, he didn't have it. That evening, at dinner, Lila brought up the rent again. "Dad, we've been thinking, maybe starting next month, we should make it $1,300. Costs are going up." I froze, not because I couldn't afford it, but because of the sheer gall. My daughter, the little girl who once begged me for ice cream money, was now nickel-and-diming her own father. Tobias leaned back in his chair, smirking like he'd just scored a touchdown. I set my fork down, my voice calm. "We'll talk about it later." Lila frowned. "What's there to talk about?" I looked at her for a long moment. "Plenty." Their eyes darted to each other, a flicker of unease passing between them. They didn't know what I knew. Not yet. That night, I sat on the porch with Brett and Katie. Katie asked me to braid her doll's hair. Brett wanted to hear about the time my fire crew pulled a dog out of a burning warehouse. As I told the story, watching their faces light up, I felt Esme there with me, her laughter, her warmth, and I swore to myself, my fight wasn't just for me, it was for them, for the future they deserve, free of Lila and Tobias's poison. When I tucked them into bed later, I kissed their foreheads and whispered, "Grandpa's got a plan," and for the first time in years, I meant every word. The morning sun spilled through blinds of the guest room, striping the walls with gold. I woke earlier than usual, heart steady but mind racing. The lawyer's words still echoed. "It's all yours, Mr. Ramirez. Every cent." I wasn't just free, I was armed. I brewed coffee in the kitchen before anyone else stirred, letting the bitter steam fill my lungs. Esme always said coffee was courage in a cup. Today, I needed every drop. When Lila shuffled in, robe tied loose, she didn't even say good morning. "Dad, the water heater's making that noise again. Could you check it today?" I smiled, slow. "Sure, after I take care of something else." She blinked, half asleep, not catching the edge of my tone. Later, Tobias strutted into the garage where I was sorting tools. "You know, Corey," he began, using my name like he owned it. "Me and Lila were talking. If you chip in a little more each month, we could finally redo the backyard. Wouldn't that be nice?" I turned to him, the hammer in my hand heavier than usual. "Why should I pay for your backyard?" His smile faltered. "Well, because you live here. We're family." Family. The word dropped like acid. I stepped closer, close enough to see the sweat bead on his temple. "Tobias, you wouldn't know family if it sat down at your table and broke bread with you." He opened his mouth, but before he could reply, Brett came bounding in, waving his backpack. "Grandpa, are you coming to my game this weekend?" That boy saved Tobias in the fire. I almost let loose right there. I ruffled Brett's hair. Wouldn't miss it. But in my chest, something shifted. No more waiting for them to tighten the screws. I was done being reactive. Now it was my turn to set the stage. That afternoon, I drove to a real estate office across town. The agent, a young guy with too much gel in his hair, nearly tripped over himself showing me listings. I told him exactly what I wanted. A home big enough for me and the kids, a kitchen worthy of Esme's recipes, a backyard where Brett could throw a ball and Katie could chase fireflies. We toured a 2-story house near Balboa Park. Sunlight pouring through tall windows, the scent of orange blossoms drifting from the neighbor's yard. I could see it all. My bread rising in the oven, Brett painting his sneakers on the porch, Katie laughing as she twirled in the living room. A place with dignity. A place of my own. I told the agent, draw up the paperwork. On the drive back, I rehearsed what I'd say when the time came to tell Lila and Tobias. I'd waited too long, let them build a castle out of my silence. Now I had the sledgehammer. But when I walked through the door that evening, they were waiting. Lila's eyes were sharp. Tobias's grin stretched too wide. "Dad," she said, her voice too sweet. "We heard something about a lottery ticket." The air went still, thick as smoke. My hand twitched toward my wallet, where the ticket stub rested against Esme's picture. They knew, or thought they did. I met their stares, steady as a man standing before a burning building, and I smiled because they had no idea the fire was already mine to control. Lila's words hit like a backdraft, sudden, searing, pulling all the air out of the room. A lottery ticket. I kept my face calm, unreadable. Years of walking into burning buildings had taught me one thing. Panic kills. Control saves. Tobias leaned forward in his chair, elbows on his knees, eyes glittering like a man smelling money. "So, is it true, Rumi? Did you hit the jackpot?" Rumi, that word again, dripping with contempt. I wanted to wipe the smirk off his face. But instead, I leaned back against the wall and folded my arms. People say all kinds of things. Gossip's cheap. Lila frowned, her voice tighter now. "Dad, the neighbor said they saw you coming out of claims office downtown. Why would you be there?" I let the silence stretch, long enough for them to squirm. Then I shrugged. Paperwork. Important paperwork. Tobias chuckled, but it was brittle. "Come on, Corey. You can trust us. If you won, well, we're family. We could invest it, grow it, make sure it benefits all of us." Invest. The word slid off his tongue, oily and slick. I could almost hear the casino bells ringing in his brain. I stood slowly, letting my chair scrape the tile. If I had won, I said evenly, it'd be mine, not yours. Their faces drained like someone pulled the plug. Lila's lips parted, hurt and disbelief twisting her features. "Dad, how could you even say that? After everything we've done for you? Done for me?" My pulse thundered in my ears. They'd taken my pension, my labor, my pride, and they had the gall to call a help. I leaned over the table, my voice low but sharp enough to cut glass. "You've taken from me every day since I walked through this door. Don't pretend it's anything else." Brett and Katie wandered into the kitchen just then, laughter bubbling between them. The tension snapped back into silence. Lila straightened, Tobias forced a grin, and I tucked the storm back inside my chest. "Grandpa," Katie said, clutching my hand, "are you still making cinnamon rolls tomorrow?" I looked down at her, at the innocence in her eyes, and smiled. "Of course, sweetheart." Later that night, in the solitude of the guest room, I pulled out the stub and held it against Esme's picture. My thumb traced her smile. "They know," I whispered, "but they don't know enough." The next morning, Tobias cornered me in the driveway, his voice hushed but urgent. "Listen, Corey, if you did win, we should announce it together. Show everyone we're united. Strong. Think about the family name." Family name. From his mouth, it was poison. I stepped closer, close enough for him to smell the coffee on my breath. "You want my money, Tobias. You don't want my name. And soon, the whole world will see the difference." He tried to laugh it off, but his eyes flickered with fear. A small victory, but one I savored, because I already had the next step in motion. Tomorrow, the down payment cleared, and once the house was mine, their kingdom of control would crumble. As I walked back inside, I could feel it, the tide turning slow but unstoppable, like fire crawling up the walls before the whole place ignites. The check cleared the next morning. I stood outside the new house, keys cold in my palm, the San Diego sun casting sharp shadows across the porch. It wasn't a mansion, but it was solid, 2 stories of brick and wood, a yard with a lemon tree in the corner, and a kitchen that begged for the smell of rising dough, a place that whispered freedom. Inside, the air was still waiting. I walked through each room, fingertips brushing the walls, as though I were blessing them. In the empty living room, I closed my eyes, could almost hear Esme humming as she unpacked boxes, her laughter spilling through the hall. For the first time since she passed, I didn't feel like a guest in someone else's story. This was mine. I called Marissa, the lawyer. "It's done," I told her. "Good," she replied. "Now comes the hard part, deciding who gets to know and when." That night, I returned to Lila's house, slipping back into the guest room like nothing had changed. The ticket stub and Esme's photo rested together in my wallet, my secret allies. I almost laughed, thinking of Tobias's smug face while I held the deed in my pocket. At dinner, Lila pried again. "Dad, you've been out a lot. What's going on?" I cut into my chicken, calm, just tying up loose ends. Tobias leaned forward, his grin wide, greedy. "Loose ends, huh? Well, don't forget, we're here for you. We're family." "Yeah," I said, chewing slowly. "Family." But the words sounded different in my mouth. It didn't taste like belonging anymore. It tasted like ash. Later, Brett found me in the garage, where I was cleaning tools. "Grandpa, Mom, and Dad fight about money all the time," he whispered. His eyes, too old for his age, flicked toward the house. "I hate it." I put a hand on his shoulder, steady and firm. "Don't worry, kiddo. Things are about to change." He nodded, trusting me in a way his parents never could. That trust was fuel. The next weekend, at Brett's baseball game, the first public crack appeared. Lila and Tobias strutted around the bleachers like royalty, talking loud about their investments and plans. When Tobias joked about me being their in-house handyman, people laughed. But I stood, raised my voice clear enough for the whole row to hear. Funny thing about handymen, they fix what's broken, even families. The laughter shifted. Eyes turned. Tobias's smirk faltered. It was small, but it was a first strike, a public moment where their image slipped and mine stood tall. Driving home, I could still feel the buzz of it. Tobias had built his power on my silence, and I'd just broken it in front of witnesses. He'd try to claw it back. I knew, but I had patience. Because soon, the house key in my pocket wouldn't just be metal. It would be my declaration of independence. And when I finally laid that key on the table, it would scorch like iron fresh from the fire. The following week, I couldn't stop fingering the new house key in my pocket, its teeth pressing grooves into my thumb. It was more than metal. It was proof. Proof that I was no longer their captive tenant. Proof that I was a man with choices again. But back in Lila's kitchen, they were circling like vultures. "Dad," Lila began, trying for sweetness. "You've been secretive lately. We just want to know you're okay." Tobias leaned back in his chair, smirking. "Yeah, Corey, if you're holding out on us, that wouldn't be very family of you." I set down my coffee cup hard enough to rattle the saucer. "Funny, Tobias, because family doesn't charge rent to their grieving father. Family doesn't work him like a mule for free." The silence that followed was heavy. Lila's face flushed. Tobias's jaw clenched. But I didn't give them the satisfaction of more. I stood, grabbed my jacket, and walked out. At the bakery supply store, I loaded my trunk with bags of flour, jars of yeast, boxes of cinnamon. The clerk raised an eyebrow. "Planning to open a bakery, old-timer?" "Planning to open a life," I said, and it felt true. That Saturday, I brought Brett and Katie to the new house for the first time. Their eyes lit up the moment they stepped through the door. "Whoa!" "Grandpa," Brett breathed, running up the stairs 2 at a time. "This is ours." Katie spun in the empty living room, her laughter bouncing off the bare walls. "It smells like sunshine." I knelt, pulling them close. "It's ours, but it's a secret for now. Not a word to your mom or Tobias yet. Understand?" They nodded solemnly. sealing the pact. Their loyalty gave me strength. That evening, back at Lila's, Tobias cracked open a beer and decided to test me. "So, Corey," he said loud enough for the neighbors across the fence to hear, "how's that handyman business of yours? Must be rolling in cash." Lila laughed a little too hard. A few heads turned. I stood, wiping my hands on a rag. "Funny thing, Tobias," I said, my voice carrying clear. "When people use you long enough, they forget what you're really worth. Then one day, you remind them." A hush fell. Tobias's smile froze. The beer bottle paused halfway to his lips. The neighbors shifted uncomfortably. Lila looked like she wanted to sink into the ground. That was the second strike. Another public crack, right in their shiny veneer. That night, Tobias tried to corner me in the hallway. "You think you embarrassed me?" His voice was low, dangerous. I met his glare without blinking. "No, Tobias, you embarrass yourself." He didn't reply, just walked off, shoulders tight. But I could feel it, his grip slipping, his control crumbling. I lay in bed later, staring at the ceiling, hearing Esme's voice in my head. "Time in, Corey. Fire doesn't need to be fast, just certain." I turned the key over my hand, in the dark. Soon, it would unlock not just a door, but my revenge. And when it did, Lila and Tobias would find themselves locked out of the world they thought they owned. I woke before dawn, the house still quiet, the faint hum of the refrigerator the only sound. I brewed a pot of coffee and sat at the kitchen table, staring at my hands. They were scarred from years of fire and tools, but they were steady, strong, capable. Esme used to call them builder's hands. Now, they were hands ready to rebuild, not just a house, but a life. Later that morning, I drove Brett and Katie back to the new place. The moment we walked through the door, Brett dropped his backpack and shouted, "This is our house! Grandpa!" Katie skipped into the kitchen and twirled in the sunlight streaming through the window. I pulled out bags of flour, sugar, and cinnamon from the trunk. "You two ready to learn a family secret?" Katie clapped her hands. "Yes." I showed them how to measure flour, how to knead until the dough pushed back, alive beneath their palms. Brett laughed when he got flour on his shirt. Katie stuck a finger into the sugar and grinned. And as we worked, I told them stories about their grandmother, the way she sang off-key while baking, the way she kissed flour onto my nose when she thought I was too serious. By the time the rolls came out of the oven, golden and fragrant, the kids' faces glowed with pride. "Grandma would be proud," Brett said quietly. I swallowed hard. "She already is." That night, I drove them back to Lila's. Tobias was waiting on the porch, arms crossed, his jaw tight. "Where have you been?" he demanded. "Out," I said simply. "With the kids." His eyes narrowed. "You should clear that with us first." I stepped close enough for him to see the steel in my eyes. "I don't need your permission to see my grandchildren. Don't forget that." He flinched just slightly, but it was enough. At dinner, Lila tried to reassert control. "Dad, Tobias and I talked. If you really did win something, you should trust us to manage it. We're better with money." I laughed, an actual laugh, deep and sharp. "Better with money? Tobias, you maxed out 3 credit cards buying a jet ski you never used." The table went silent. Brett's fork clattered to the plate. Katie stared at her mother. Lila's face went crimson. Tobias's mouth twisted, and I knew right then that was a third strike. The public humiliation they couldn't spin away. "You want my money?" I said, my voice calm but cutting. "Earn it. The days of you bleeding me dry are over." I stood and walked out, leaving them frozen in their own dining room. Back in the guest room, I packed a small bag, slipped the key to the new house into my pocket, and whispered to Esme's picture, "It's time." Tomorrow, the truth would burn bright. And when the flames cleared, they'd see just how much of me they'd underestimated. The next morning, I didn't wait for their voices to fill the house. I was already gone before the sun broke the horizon, driving toward the new place with a trunk full of boxes. The streets of San Diego were quiet, the kind of quiet that hums with possibility. When I unlocked the door and stepped inside, the smell of fresh paint and lemon polish greeted me. My house, Not theirs. Not borrowed space. Not a rented room. Mine. I set the boxes down in the living room and stood in the center of it all, arms spread, breathing deep. It felt like oxygen after years of smoke. By noon, Brett and Katie arrived, backpacks bouncing as they ran up the steps. "Grandpa!" Katie cried. "Is this really it? Are we moving today?" I crouched to meet their eyes. "We are. But remember, this is our secret. Not yet for your mom and Tobias." Brett grinned. "Got it. Mission impossible." We unpacked together, laughter bouncing off bare walls. I taught them how to set up the kitchen. Show Brett how to use a wrench to tighten a loose bolt on the door hinge. Let Katie pick which corner of the backyard would be her garden. Their joy filled the house like sunlight. That evening, I baked bread in the new oven, the crust crackling, the smell carrying to the open windows. Neighbors peeked over the fence, curious. One waved, and I waved back. Already, it felt like a community, not a prison. When I dropped the kids off at Lila's later, Tobias was waiting in the driveway. He eyed the crumbs on Katie's shirt, the flour on Brett's hands. "Where have you been?" His tone was sharp, accusing. "Out," I said, locking eyes with him. "Making memories." Lila appeared behind him, arms crossed. "Dad, we deserve to know what's going on. You can't just disappear with the kids." I stepped closer, lowering my voice so only they could hear. "You've taken my money, my labor, and my pride. But you will not take my time with my grandchildren. That ends today." Their faces tightened, jaws clenched, but they said nothing. Inside, Brett hugged me tight before bed. "Don't worry, Grandpa. We'll keep the secret." Katie whispered, "It's our magic house." I kissed their foreheads and walked back to the guest room. But I didn't unpack. My bag stayed ready, the key heavy in my pocket, because tomorrow the lawyer would join me for a meeting at the bank. Tomorrow, I would place my winnings beyond Lila and Tobias's reach forever. And when I finally told him the truth, it wouldn't be a whisper in a dark kitchen. It would be a detonation in broad daylight. As I lay awake that night, I pictured their faces when the firestorm broke, and for the first time in years, I slept with a smile. The morning of the bank meeting, I dressed with care. Clean shirt, polished boots, the same cologne Esme once had made me smell like a man who knows his worth. It wasn't vanity. It was armor. Marissa met me at the bank, her briefcase snapping open with precision that matched her sharp gaze. "Once these funds transfer," she said, sliding forms across the desk, "they'll be locked under your name. Untouchable. Not Lila's. Not Tobias's. Yours." The banker, a young man who couldn't have been older than Brett, shook my hand with a little too much enthusiasm. "Congratulations, Mr. Ramirez. This is a life changer." I thought of Tobias's smirk, Lila's cold calculations, and my grip tightened. You have no idea. When it was done, I stepped out into the San Diego sunlight feeling taller, stronger. For the first time since Esme's passing, I wasn't just surviving. I was leading. That evening, back at Lila's house, they were waiting. Lila's face was taut. Tobias's grin stretched thin. "Dad," she began, "we deserve honesty. Did you win the lottery or not?" I set my bag down, deliberately slow. "Why?" Tobias leaned forward, eager. "Because if you did, we should handle it together. Think of what we could do with $4 million. Investments, vacations, college funds." "College funds?" I barked a laugh. "You've drained me for years, and now you're pretending this is about the kids?" Lila's voice rose, shrill. "We open our home to you. We've carried you." I slammed my hand on the table, the sound cracking through the room like a breaking beam. "You charge me $1,200 a month for a guest room. You work me like a hired hand. You didn't carry me, you leached off me." The words hit like water dousing fire, except this fire flared higher. Their faces twisted, exposed. Brett and Katie stood frozen in the doorway, eyes wide, watching their parents' masks crumble. I softened my tone only for them. "Kids, go upstairs. This is grown-up talk." When they were gone, I leaned in, voice low, deadly calm. "Yes, I won. For $1 million. and not a dime of it will touch your greedy hands. Tobias's jaw dropped, his face pale. Lila's breath caught like a gasp of smoke. For once, they were speechless. I straightened, the silence thick. Tomorrow I'm gone, and when I walk out, I'm taking your children's respect with me, because they see the truth now, clear as day. I grabbed my bag and headed for the door. Dad. Lila's voice cracked. If you walk out, don't come back. I turned, the door handle cold in my grip. That's the idea. As I stepped into the night, I felt the chains fall from my shoulders. Behind me, their empire control smoldered, and ahead of me waited a house, a future, and the final firestorm they never saw coming. The night air was cool on my face as I drove away, the headlights carving a path through the dark. My bag sat in the passenger seat, the house key glinting under the dashboard lights. Every mile I put between myself and Lila's house felt like peeling off another layer of suffocating smoke. When I unlocked the door of my own home, the silence inside was different. Not heavy, not oppressive, alive, waiting. I set my bag down in the hallway and let out a laugh I hadn't felt in years. Freedom had a sound, and it was that laugh echoing off bare walls. The next morning, Brett and Katie were dropped off for the day. Lila's voice on the phone was clipped, brittle. We're busy. Can you watch them? She didn't know she was handing me the future with those words. The kids ran through the house like it was theirs already, and in a way, it was. We baked bread until the counters were dusted white, played catch in the backyard, and filled the place with something Lila and Tobias could never understand, joy without conditions. At dinner, we sat on the floor with paper plates, tearing into warm rolls. Brett raised a soda can like a toast. To Grandpa's house. Katie giggled, clinking hers against his. To cinnamon rolls forever. I raised mine too, my chest tight with pride. To family, the kind that takes care of each other. Later, after I drove them home, I walked them up the porch steps. Lila opened the door, her eyes narrowing at the sight of flour on their clothes and smiles on their faces. What did you do all day? She demanded. Made memories. Brett said quickly, shooting me a glance. Katie nodded, her grin too wide to hide. Lila's lips thinned. Tobias appeared behind her, beer in hand, eyes darting from the kids to me. You're trying to turn them against us, he accused. I stepped closer, my voice steady. No, Tobias. I'm showing them what love looks like. Something you'll never grasp. His face reddened, his grip tightening on the bottle. For a moment, I thought he might swing it, but he didn't. He just sneered, and I walked away. That night, back in my own bed, I pulled Esme's photo from my wallet. I did it, love. I whispered. I got out. But deep down, I knew the war wasn't over. Lila and Tobias weren't going to surrender. They'd come for me, for the kids, for the money. And when they did, I'd need more than freedom. I'd need fire. I closed my eyes, the house creaking softly around me, and I felt calm. Because for the first time, the battleground wasn't theirs. It was mine. And the next time they tried to strike, I'd make sure the whole damn family saw their masks burn away. It didn't take long for them to make their move. 2 days later, I was sweeping the porch of my new house when a black SUV pulled up. Tobias stepped out first. Slick suit, sunglasses, even though the sky was overcast. Lila trailed behind, her lips pressed tight, eyes sharp. They looked like predators, circling a meal they thought was already dead. Nice place, Dad, Lila said, her voice flat. When were you going to tell us? I rested on the broom handle, steady as ever. When you earn the right to know, which you haven't. Tobias forced a laugh, striding up the walkway. Come on, Corey. For $1 million? You really think you can handle that alone? You need us. We're family. There was again, family, their favorite leash. I leaned closer, my voice low. The only thing I need from you is distance. Neighbors peeked from across the street. Mrs. Garcia, the widow who watered her roses every morning, paused to watch. Tobias must have felt the eyes on him, because his smile tightened into a snarl. Careful, old man, he muttered, stepping closer. Wouldn't want people thinking you've lost your mind. I straightened, Full height, shoulders squared. Lost my mind? No. I just finally remembered who I am. Lila hissed, "You're being selfish. You owe us. We took you in." I barked a laugh that turned heads. "You charge me rent. You work me like a laborer. That's not family, that's exploitation." The word rang out across the street, loud enough for everyone to hear. A couple of kids stopped their bikes on the sidewalk, staring. Mrs. Garcia shook her head, muttering something in Spanish. Tobias's face went crimson. He grabbed my arm, hard. "You think you can humiliate me?" I yanked free, my voice sharp as a siren. "No, Tobias. You humiliate yourself every time you open your mouth." Gasps rippled from the neighbors. Lila tugged at his sleeve, whispering furiously, but the damage was done. The perfect image they'd cultivated cracked wide open, right there on my front lawn. I turned, opened my door, and before stepping inside, I looked back. "Don't come here again. Next time, I'll have the police waiting." The door shut behind me with a satisfying thud. Inside, my heart pounded, but not from fear, from release. The whole neighborhood had seen the truth. I wasn't a dependent old man they painted me to be. I was a fighter. That night, Brett called me from his room, voice hushed. "Grandpa, Mom and Dad are furious. But I'm proud of you." Tears burned my eyes, but I kept my voice steady. "Thanks, kiddo. That means more than any lottery win." As I hung up, I stared at the key on the table, the bread cooling on the counter, Esme's picture smiling up at me. The battle was public now, and soon the war would be final. Because once you strip a bully of his mask in front of everyone, the only thing left for him is to choke on his own shame. The fallout came fast. The next morning, when I stopped by the corner diner for coffee, whispers chased me from booth to booth. Folks had seen the scene on my lawn. San Diego may be a big city, but neighborhoods talk. Mrs. Garcia waved me over to her table, her bracelets jingling. "Senor Corey," she said softly, "don't let them back you into a corner. People saw who you are yesterday. A man standing up for himself." I thanked her, heart steady. Word had spread. The humiliation Tobias feared most was already seeping through the cracks, turning his name into a punchline. Back at the house, I poured myself another coffee, leaned against the counter, and thought of Esme. "We're almost there, love," I whispered. One more push. That evening, the phone rang. Lila, her voice was tight, brittle. "Dad, we need to talk. Tonight, at the house." I could hear Tobias muttering in the background, low and angry. I let the silence hang just long enough before answering. "Fine, I'll be there." When I arrived, they were waiting in the living room. Tobias had a stack of papers on the table, contracts or schemes, I couldn't tell. Lila's eyes were red, mascara smudged. "Dad," she began, trying for soft, "we can't undo what was said, but you have to understand, we were only trying to help. You don't know how to manage that kind of money." I chuckled, slow and cold. "Help? You bled me dry for years." That wasn't help. That was theft with a smile. Tobias slapped the papers onto the table. "Sign these. Transfer some of it to us. Call it repayment." Repayment. My stomach turned. I leaned over the table, meeting his eyes. "Repayment? For what? Charging me rent in my daughter's house? Making me fix your pipes and paint your walls? You don't want repayment. Tobias, you want control." He stood, fists clenched. "Without us, you'd still be rotting alone." I took a step closer, steady, my voice low but sharp. "Without me, you'd still be broke and drowning in debt. Don't you forget that." Lila's voice cracked. "Dad, please don't do this. Don't turn your back on us." I stared at her, pain sharp in my chest. "I didn't turn my back, Lila. You pushed me away the moment you put a price tag on family." The silence that followed was suffocating. Even Tobias didn't have a comeback. Finally, I straightened, pulling the house key from my pocket. I placed it on the table with a sharp clink. "This is my new life. My home. You're not welcome there. And you'll never touch a cent of my winnings." Their faces twisted anger, fear, desperation all tangled together. I picked up my bag and walked to the door. At the threshold, I paused. Next time you try to come after me, it won't just be the neighbors watching. It'll be the law. The door slammed behind me, and for the first time in decades, I didn't look back. Driving home, I felt the tension crackle inside me. This wasn't just about money anymore. This was about dignity, respect, survival. And I knew the final reckoning was coming. A firestorm neither of them could escape. The week that followed was quiet. Too quiet. Lila stopped calling. Tobias stopped lurking. But quiet doesn't mean peace. Quiet means plotting. And I knew them well enough to smell the storm building behind the silence. I spent those days fortifying my new life. I bought proper furniture, built shelves in the garage, planted herbs out back for Katie's magic garden. Brett helped me set up a workbench, his hands steadying the boards while I drilled. Every nail, every screw, every laugh we shared was another brick in the wall that kept Lila and Tobias out. But rumors traveled faster than fire. At church on Sunday, I overheard whispers about Tobias shouting at a bartender, about Lila crying to her co-workers that her father had betrayed her. Their image was collapsing, one ugly truth at a time. And then the summons came. I found the envelope wedged into my mailbox, my name scrawled in Tobias's arrogant hand. Inside was a letter, thick with threats dressed up as pleas. Dad, if you don't reconsider, we'll have no choice but to take legal action. This money belongs to the family. To us. Sign over what's fair before this gets ugly. Ugly, as if it hadn't been ugly already. I carried the letter inside, laid it flat on the kitchen table, and pressed my palm over it. My pulse was steady. They wanted a war of paper, of signatures and intimidation. But I'd lived through firestorms that turned buildings into ash. They had no idea what real destruction looked like. That evening, Brett called again, his voice hushed. Grandpa, Mom, and Dad keep fighting. Tobias yelled so loud the neighbors called the cops. Katie scared. I closed my eyes, the ache cutting deep. You hold tight, kiddo. This ends soon. I promise. The next day, I went to see Marissa. I handed her the letter. She read it, lips curling. Empty threats. They can't touch your money. But she looked up sharp. They're cornered. Cornered people do reckless things. I nodded. Then I'll be ready. That night, I baked bread until midnight, the rhythm of kneading steadying me. The smell filled the house, warm and defiant. I imagined Esme beside me, flour on her cheek, telling me, the hotter the fire, Corey, the stronger the steel. I set the loaves on the counter, steam rising, and stared out the dark window. Somewhere across town, Tobias was pacing, fuming, plotting his next move. And I knew, when he finally struck, it would be loud, public, the kind of showdown that leaves no room for pretending. So I waited, steady as a firefighter at the door of a burning house, knowing the final alarm was about to sound. The final alarm rang on a Saturday afternoon. Brett's championship baseball game had drawn the whole neighborhood to park. Families with coolers, kids chasing foul balls, the smell of hot dogs and cut grass thick in the air. I sat on the bleachers, cap pulled low, cheering when Brett smacked a double into left field. Katie waved from the dugout, face painted with stripes of team colors. And then Tobias appeared, strutting down the bleachers like he owned the place, Lila at his side. He wore a pressed shirt and that smug grin he thought made him look confident, but his eyes, wild desperate, betrayed him. He stopped in front of me, loud enough for half the stands to hear. There he is, the big winner, sitting on $4 million while his family suffers. Conversations around us hushed. Parents shifted. Kids turned. The air tightened. I rose slowly, squaring my shoulders. Careful, Tobias. You're about to embarrass yourself again. He barked a laugh. Embarrass myself? No, I'm exposing you. This man, he jabbed a finger at me, took advantage of his own daughter, living in her house, paying scraps while hiding millions. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Lila's face crumpled, half shame, half rage. I stepped forward, my voice clear, steady, cutting through the murmur. Scraps? $1,200 a month for a guest room. Free labor on every busted pipe and rotting fence. They drained me dry, and when I finally stood up, they called it betrayal. People shifted again, eyes widening. Tobias tried to laugh it off, but his voice cracked. "You're twisting this." "No," I said firmly, raising my voice so the crowd heard every word. "I love my daughter. I honor my family. I carried them when they fell. But greed poisoned them. And today, in front of God and neighbors, I'm done carrying liars." Lila's mouth opened, but no words came. Tobias's face burned crimson, sweat dripping down his temple. The umpire blew the whistle for the next inning, but all eyes stayed on us. This was the game now. I reached into my pocket, pulled out the house key, and held it high so the sunlight caught it. This is mine, bought with my winnings, my freedom, my dignity. And it's where Brett and Katie will always find love, not exploitation. A murmur of approval rolled through the stands. Someone clapped. Then another. The sound swelled, steady, undeniable. Tobias's smirk shattered. Lila looked at her shoes, shoulders trembling. I stepped closer, my voice low, meant only for them. "This is your public unmasking. You wanted my money. You lost my respect. And now," I gestured the crowd, to Brett and Katie watching wide-eyed from the dugout. "You've lost your image. You'll never recover it." I turned, walked back to my seat, and the clapping followed me like a tide. On the field, Brett tipped his cap toward me, pride shining in his eyes. Katie blew a kiss from the bench. I sat, exhaling slow, the key still warm in my hand. For years, I'd lived in smoke. But today, I walked out of fire carrying nothing but truth. And as the crowd's applause faded into the afternoon breeze, I knew the revenge was complete. Not with fists, not with flames, but with dignity reclaimed and lives reduced to ash. If you like this story, please like this video. Subscribe to the channel and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the right.